The neon-drenched streets of Zalara Station pulsed with alien life, a sprawling marketplace where 100 species bartered, schemed, and survived. Alexander Chen moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his expensive coat concealed beneath a worn traveler's cloak. The human billionaire had learned long ago that wealth attracted the wrong kind of attention in places like this. He was here on business, acquiring rare crystalline compounds for his terraforming empire, but something made him pause near a dingy alley between two market stalls. A voice, trembling and desperate, caught his attention. "Please," the voice whispered in broken galactic common. Just pretend to know me. Pretend to hug me." Alexander turned to see her, a Zeltharian girl, her pale blue skin shimmering with distress, her large amber eyes darting toward three hulking figures approaching from the opposite end of the alley. Kirsten, he would learn her name later, looked terrified, her slender frame trembling as she pressed herself against the alley wall. The Zeltharians were known throughout the galaxy as empaths, capable of sensing emotions but physically fragile. They were also, tragically, prized as slaves by certain criminal syndicates. The three approaching figures wore the distinctive markings of the Kroth cartel. Alexander didn't hesitate. Years of negotiating hostile corporate takeovers had taught him to read situations instantly and act decisively. He stepped into the alley and opened his arms. "There you are," he called out in perfect galactic common, injecting warmth into his voice. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Kirsten's eyes widened in surprise, but survival instinct kicked in. She rushed forward and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. Alexander felt her trembling, felt the cold moisture of tears against his shirt. "Play along," he murmured softly, returning the embrace with convincing familiarity. The three Kroth enforcers stopped, their reptilian features twisting with suspicion. The largest one, his scales scarred and dark, stepped forward. "That's cartel property," he growled, his hand resting on the plasma pistol at his hip. "She owes a debt. Hand her over, human, and we'll forget you interfered." Alexander kept his arm around Kirsten, feeling her grip tighten on his coat. He fixed the enforcer with a cold stare, the same look that had made corporate rivals crumble across three-star systems. "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Alexander said calmly. "This is Kirsten, my contracted cultural liaison. She's been in my employ for 6 standard months. Perhaps you've confused her with someone else." He reached slowly into his coat, and the enforcers tensed. But Alexander only produced a holographic datapad, its screen glowing with official-looking documentation. In reality, it was his personal device displaying his company's letterhead, impressive enough to give anyone pause. "If you'd like to dispute this employment contract," Alexander continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous register, "I'm sure the station authority would be interested in why the Kroth cartel is attempting to abduct registered employees, particularly employees of Chun Terraforming Solutions." The name registered. Alexander watched as recognition flickered across the lead enforcer's face. Chun Terraforming Solutions wasn't just a company, it was an empire. They'd transformed 17 worlds, employed millions, and had contracts with half the major powers in this sector. More importantly, they had the resources to make problems disappear, or to make problems for those who interfered with their operations. The enforcer's hand moved away from his weapon. "Chun?" he repeated, his tone shifting from threatening to uncertain. "Alexander Chun." "The same," Alexander replied coolly. "And I don't appreciate having my evening interrupted. Now, unless you want me to file a formal complaint with station authority, one that will bring far more scrutiny to your organization's activities here, I suggest you leave." Immediately, the three enforcers exchanged glances. They were thugs, not fools. Attacking a billionaire magnate, especially one with Alexander's connections and resources, would bring down consequences their bosses wouldn't tolerate. The lead enforcer spat on the ground, a gesture of disgust, but he was already backing away. "This isn't over," he muttered, though the threat rang hollow. "Yes," Alexander said flatly. "It is." They watched the enforcers disappear into the crowded market. Only when they were completely out of sight did Kirsten finally pull back, her amber eyes brimming with tears of relief and confusion. You're really Alexander Chen?" she whispered, staring at him as if seeing him for the first time. "The terraforming magnate." "I am," Alexander confirmed gently. He studied her carefully. The fading bruises on her arms, the worn clothing, the desperate hope in her eyes. And you're really running from the Croft cartel? Kirsten nodded miserably. I was sold to them when my family couldn't pay our debts on the colony world. I escaped 3 days ago. I've been hiding, but they have trackers everywhere. I thought if I could just blend in, just find someone to pretend. Her voice broke. Alexander made a decision. It was the same instinct that had driven him to build his empire. Seeing potential where others saw only problems. Seeing opportunity where others saw only risk. That employment contract I mentioned, he said. Let's make it real. You said you've been running for 3 days. You must be exhausted, hungry. Come with me. I have a suite on the upper levels. You can clean up, eat something, and we'll talk about getting you somewhere safe. Kirsten stared at him, disbelief warring with desperate hope. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Alexander smiled slightly. Let's just say I've never been fond of slavers. And besides, he glanced toward where the enforcers had disappeared. I meant what I said. If you're willing, I could actually use a cultural liaison. The Zeltharian colonies are next on my company's expansion list. Your insight would be invaluable. It wasn't charity. Alexander Chin never did charity. It was business, opportunity, and perhaps something more human. The simple inability to walk away from someone in need. Kirsten's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. As they walked together toward the upper levels of Zalara Station, Alexander reflected on the strangeness of the galaxy. He'd come here to acquire minerals and had instead acquired. What? An employee? A responsibility? Perhaps even a friend? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The Croft cartel had just learned an expensive lesson about humanity. Humans didn't just dominate through technology or wealth. They dominated through something more fundamental. The stubborn, reckless instinct to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Humanity. Fuck yeah.